Hello everyone, and welcome to the V2 progress update and Q&A. We want to first do an audio check, so just want to make sure you guys can hear us okay, and everything sounds good on your end. So in order to give you good audio, time to hear good audio, I'm just going to once again introduce myself. I am Whitney. I'm one of the lead developers and owners of Legacy Horse Game. Michelle, thank you for the follow. And I'm the lead coding developer. And I'm going to let Lydia introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm the other co-owner and developer. I'm actually a scientist by training, so I am useless as far as coding and stuff, but I can do artwork and all sorts of math and genetics.
Awesome. Thank you, Gomi. And Demonic okay, well, we're going to dive right into it. So the very first thing that we're going to do, we didn't really talk about exactly about the order that we were going to do this in, but I think the first thing that I want to do is tell you guys about the progress that we've made in the last month and a half to 2 months since we last streamed. Before we dive into that, though, I'm going to make two caveats. One, we're not sharing everything because there are some features that we still want to kind of reveal over time that we're really excited to share, but we won't want to dump it all at once. Two, there will potentially still be bugs that we run into. The game V2 is largely untested. We do the preliminary testing as I complete features, but we are planning on doing some major deep dive testing before we do the launch. So we still run into bugs as we're doing this. In fact, yesterday when we were doing kind of a practice dry run, we found 3 or 4 bugs, but thankfully we squished those ones. So with those caveats there, let's go ahead and dive into it. One more thing to add, if you have questions, just throw them in the chat and we'll grab them as we see them. We may reserve the right to pause on answering it because we may be covering it later in the stream. But yeah, throw your questions up in chat. That's part of the process here. So let's jump in. A couple things that you may see from last time is we actually finished the nav bar up here, so it looks back to how the V1 updated nav bar looks. So I got that done, but we're gonna go into the horse, one of the horses. I'm gonna show you. I think we just found, oh, it was just being slow. Okay, so let's go to my horses. And we are going to look at this. I think it's a stud. I did get the name back up here. Just some little bug fixes that I got done. But I do want to point out that the profile tab of the horse is now going to have a lease history. So we added the sales history in V1 and V2. You will also see the lease history of the horse, including information such as who leased it, who leased the horse out, the leaser, who leased the horse, the leasee, both the owner of the ranch and the ranch itself that they went to, the start game date, end game date, price per month, whether it allowed breeding, showing, training, or job, and then the real life start date and end date. So you can see exactly when a lease started and ended. So that's a minor little addition, but I think it's going to be really good for everybody to keep track of who they've leased to and who they've leased from. Okay, so we're also going to show you some tabs on the ranch page. So I went ahead and completed, I didn't actually have the show results in here. So we completed a couple tabs on here. So we have the public sales page, which might not have any sales on it. And the public studs page, which does have. It's not filterable because it's already filtered down to just the public studs on this ranch. So we felt like that was probably filtered down enough. We also have public semen sales, which is filterable. So you can do it by breed, body type. That just gave a feature away. And a couple other things. We'll talk about that later. And we also have a show results page. So instead of getting a notification for every placement between 5th and 1st, you'll actually only get notifications for first place placements in V2. Instead of having notifications for everything, you'll actually have this table, which shows aren't fully functional in V2 yet. They're about 90% there, so I don't have anything in this table to actively show you, but it will be filterable by placement, date, in-game date, so month and year, and the name of the horse. And it'll show you the horse, which show it was in, the game date that it ran, the score, and the placement. So instead of having an overwhelming number of announcements or notifications on your ranch page, which isn't a bad thing because it means your horses are doing well, but it can be overwhelming and it can make more important notifications such as births or other notifications get lost. So we decided to go ahead and move it to this new tab. Which brings us, I'm kind of skipping around, Lydia, to what makes sense to do in what order. But that brings us to 2 new pages, which shows me better about running more consistently in V2. Yes. All the bugs that we're having right now in V1 shouldn't exist in V2 because it's brand new code. That being said, I'm certain there will be new bugs. But we are going to do as much testing prior to the V2 launch as possible. We're a little better equipped for this process in going into V2 than we are V1. We were both new to game development, new to this process. I was a young developer, young in my career, and we've learned a lot both through me personally. I've learned a lot about bug testing both through the game and through my career, professional career. So I think it's going to go a lot smoother, knock on wood. So the new pages up here are the reproduction and management. So the reproduction tab will have your semen storage, semen sales, so you can see pending approvals, which bouncing around a lot because there's a lot to go over. But the pending approvals is because semen sales and stud services now have the option to require approval. So if you have a semen sale that requires approval and somebody makes a request, you'll see the pending approvals here. So you'll see the stallion, who's requesting to buy it, how many straws, and you'll have the button to approve it. You'll also see your semen that is up for sale here with the amount of straws for sale, the price per straws, and whether or not approval is required. And you can remove them from sale here. And then, of course, we have the stud services, which currently, and I'm sorry, guys, we didn't pre-populate this well enough. Currently, I don't have any pending approvals, but this is where stud approvals will go. And then, obviously, semen storage is the typical semen storage. Looks almost identical to what it was before. Moving from that, we also have the management page, which will only be accessible to people with a subscription, a ranch subscription. But this is just going to be where the ranch manager lives. We added a couple things to the ranch manager table. Whether or not the horse is pregnant is one of them. We also are adding, gosh, I got to say, Lydia, I didn't remember all of the stuff that I've added. I did not.
You've done a lot in the last 2 months.
Yeah, I did not document this as well as I thought I had. So I'm just remembering too, we added Carl, as we love to call the ranch manager, will also manage a mare's pregnancy, meaning if you have this checked on a mare, I probably need to make it so it's grayed out if it's a stallion. But if you have it checked on a mare, he will, when the mare hits their second trimester, he will remove the mare from any jobs, remove it from any like automatic show entry, and set their feed, which he already kind of does with target condition, but he'll make sure they're on the right feed too. The location manager, I believe the location manager or the feed room, I can't remember which one currently is accessible to you even if you don't have a subscription. It was never meant to be. We just decided that we would wait to move it to the subscription only section until V2 when we decided to go. We were going to wait until launch of the completed game, but we decided to wait until V2 or do it in V2 so people can get used to it. And then we've got the feed room, which also shows a feature that we're going to go over here in a little bit. So just ignore some of that information there. We made a few tweaks to some performance abilities. We're not going to go into it. It's all back end stuff, and a few tweaks to a couple confirmation traits. Just the genetics and how things are calculated to balance the game out a little bit better. On performance abilities, let's go back to our horse. Horses will now have a starting jumping value. Neither of us can remember why we decided that horses wouldn't start with a jumping value, a natural initial ability that a foal would have. The starting value, it isn't just about like what the foal starts with their capability and you grow into the potential. It's also the idea that as a horse matures from the time that it's born to 2 years old, when you can start training in a discipline in developing the performance traits, they would develop an innate amount of it. And instead of simulating that over time, we just decided it would be simpler to give them the starting value. So in V2, horses will have a starting value for jumping here, and it won't start at 0. So you'll be able to get ahead a little bit in jumping disciplines a little bit quicker. They'll reach their max a little bit quicker. We don't need to talk about that. Confirmation tab. We added, so I don't know if you guys have seen this confirmation tab yet. I believe we shared it in the last stream, but the confirmation tab is a little bit different now. You can select the area of the horse that you would like to see, and it'll tell you the confirmation traits specific to that area, such as head size, head profile, anything to do with the neck. The other option, you can choose to show everything and it'll just show the whole list. Or you can choose a performance trait and it will show all of the confirmation traits that directly impact that performance trait. The last time we showed this, we were missing stride, knee action, hawk action, and gaits. So those have been added in. So yeah, we just felt like this was a good quality of life update. Doing it this way is more visually appealing and it allows you to drill down to the traits that you want to see. I also felt that it'll help people understand the confirmation traits a little bit better. Like people will understand, oh, the line is here, top line is here. Giving people a little bit, educating people a little bit more, I think is what I'm trying to say. So there's that. I'm kind of rushing through these updates because we have some exciting features that we want to reveal. But if you guys have any questions on any of the updates, feel free to throw it in the chat and we will pause and answer those questions. So I want to go to the horse health tab. I don't believe we showed this off. We manually gave this horse a couple injuries, but the injuries look a little bit different now. Again, we wanted something that was a little bit more visually appealing and kind of what am I trying to say? Kind of more informative in a way, in a visual way. So this horse has 2 injuries. So when you load into the health tab, you're gonna see this silhouette, and if your horse has any injuries, it will have these little notification bubbles. So if I click one of these, you can see that this horse has muscle soreness, and if I click the other one, she is also suffering from colic. Excuse me. And you can still treat the horse with this button or call the vet with this button. When you do one, you can't then do the other. And there are some injuries that will not allow you to treat them. They require you to call the vet. They're too severe of injuries for you to treat yourself. Just like in V1, treating is typically cheaper than calling the vet, but not necessarily as effective in healing the horse. So when you call the vet, it will more likely to speed up the healing time of the horse for most injuries. The difference in how much calling the vet impacts it versus treatment is really dependent on the injury. So if the more severe an injury, the more a vet will make a difference. Calling the vet will make a difference. Whereas something like a cut or a scrape, there isn't much difference between treating it yourself and calling the vet. We're going to go ahead and treat this colic. Something else that is in V2 is these pop-ups. They're called toasts. When you interact with the game and you're doing something that you need some sort of feedback, there will be a toast that lets you know that it was successful or not. So now we've treated the colic. This has turned gray. So you'll still know that the injury is there, but you'll know that it's been treated or the vet has been called. If I try to treat it again, it's going to actually, for some reason, giving me 2, but the important part is it's actually giving me a notification that the horse has already been treated. If I were to close this and go back in, the treatment option goes away. I'm trying to work out how to make it disappear as soon as you click it, but the way I've implemented this, it's a little tricky to do that. So it might just have to be that way. So that's treatment. And then if I call the vet on this muscle soreness, you'll see it tells you how much the vet charged for their services in the pop-up. And you can also see that if we go back to the ranch and go to the finances and go to, I don't know what, game month we're in, July or 41. Oh, okay. These are backwards. That's good to know. So vet fee for treatment of soreness. This needs to say what horse it's for. So we've got a couple little bugs here we need to work out. But like I said, that's to be expected at this stage. The next thing I want to go over is imports. So there's a couple things I want to talk about on imports. The main thing is that imported horses will have under saddle training complete, just like they do in V1. But that's something that, and some of the stuff that we're going over is exactly the same as V1, but it's been recoded. I'm just telling you guys the progress that we've made on that. But if I go to my horses and we go look at this Frisian that I imported, we can see that, go to the training tab, which is, of course, the new version. I'm not sure this was here last time, but on the training tab in V2, you'll be able to see the personality traits, the talents. This is actually a very talented horse. And the performance stats, and the performance stats will update as you exercise a horse live. So if we go to the groundwork, you can see that all of the groundwork is completed. And if we go to the under saddle, you can see that all of the under saddle is completed as well. But if we go into a discipline, nothing in the disciplines are completed. Just like in V1, we just had to rework how we did it because of the changes to the training system. One additional change that we did make to the training system, let me go to my fold. The previous button did not just work. Did not refresh. Okay. So this is my fold, so it should not have any training. If we go to groundwork, it doesn't. If we were to go to under saddle, it's all going to be grayed out. I don't have a horse that I can really show this on at this point in time, but essentially every single task on here, including backup, leg yields, transitions, neck rein, will all require walkout in V2. So walkout is the first step, prerequisite for every other trading task. It's a very cowy horse. Actually, also a very talented horse. Another change that we can't really show you, but we do want to talk about. Pasture breeding has been tweaked a little bit. Horses that are injured will not pasture breed. So we did this to kind of help mitigate the insane overpopulation that happens on ranches that are just kind of ignored. And so if a stallion or a mare is injured, they will not be able to pasture breed. They'll still be able to regular breed. We didn't take that out, but it will prevent pasture breeding. So just something to be aware of in V2. Another thing I got done is the studs page. This wasn't done at all before. And we added a new feature to stud listings and semen listings. And that is, you'll see this one was done before I added the feature, so it doesn't have it. But you'll see here we have this more info. And you can actually write a little ad. I think the character limit is like 500 characters. Might be more than that. I would have to double check the code. But you can write a little like classified ad for your stud. And it is the same on the semen sales. So here's the description. You also note that they mark if they require approval as well. We changed the layout of the semen cards a little bit, semen sale card, but it's all the same information. Well, this is a bug because this guy is saying he is his own dam and sire. So I need to figure out why that's happening. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about oh, yes, there's one more thing I want to show you guys before we start getting into weeds on a couple things. And that is the ranch manager can now be managed individually on a horse's page. So this is for subscribers who subscribe and get access to the ranch manager. If you're subscribed and you have access to the ranch manager, this will show up on your horse's page, and you can set their I need to add the mare management here, pregnancy management, because we decided to add that after I did this section. But you can turn them onto auto job. Removing them from auto job when they're on the manager will actually remove them from their current job as well. Currently in V1, you have to go in after you remove them from auto job and manually remove them from their job. So that is a nice change as well. And then this needs to be reworked a little bit because of some changes that we're making to the show system, but that's for another stream that we're going to go over that. We did work on, so I worked on some stuff that's really behind the scenes stuff. The account management page did get started. So if I open the settings and go to account, you can see the ranch management section is there. The reset is available and credit management is currently here. The thing to be aware of, it mostly works the same. Transferring to another user, credits to another user, or exchanging ranch in-game cash for credits is going to work mostly the same, but it now has a tracking system on the back end. So you'll also see it in your transactions on your ranch page. So if we go back to the ranch and go to finances, go to July, you'll see a background credit exchange right here. And it'll tell you exactly how much you paid. So it'll track that in your finances on the ranch that you exchanged the credit for. And then we're just doing some tracking on the back end to help us in case there's bugs with credit management. I did start working on the store update for V2. There's going to be a really good quality of life change for subscribers to the range manager and additional features that you get with a ranch subscription. And that is right now you have to manually renew your subscription every month. But the service provider that we use for processing transactions actually has a feature that I wasn't as familiar with their functionality when we integrated the store into V1 as I am now. I have a lot more experience now. And I figured out how to work with their subscription service. So they will manage the subscription on their end, and we just essentially check in with them on whether or not it's been renewed, and it'll renew automatically. And there will be a feature within the account page here where you will manage your subscriptions. It'll likely be in this section where if the sub is active here, you'll have an unsubscribe button to be able to unsubscribe. But other than that, it'll renew automatically every month or every 6 months or every year, depending on what your time frame that you choose to subscribe, the length of time that you choose to subscribe for. Okay, that is a lot of information, a lot of stuff that we just went over. It's not everything that I've done in the last month and a half to 2 months. But like I said, there's some stuff that we're keeping to ourselves for now. We will be revealing them either via the blog or another live stream over the next few months. But we want to hype you guys up slowly as we roll into V2. But there's more to come. We have a question. So could we eventually get a broodmare ad page as well? Yeah, I think that's doable. Lydia, will you mark that down?
Sure.
So I don't forget. I think that's a great idea. I didn't think about that. We'd have to figure out the mechanics of it. But I think an advertisement with maybe just a link to message you, or send you a notification when there's a request. We'll have to think through the mechanics of it, but I think that's a wonderful idea. I actually surprised we didn't think of it. So yeah, we'll add that to our to-do list. Okay. Well, let me look. Do we want to, Lydia, do we want to talk about the big announcement and stuff, or do we want to go over some of the new features that we're going to reveal first?
Let's do features first.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. So the two major features that we're going to go over, if we go to one of the horses pages, and you might have seen, oh, and I forgot to mention this. some of the artwork is broken because we're changing because of some feature changes, which we're not going to go into in depth right now. Some of the feature changes are breaking the artwork, and we can't change the artwork without breaking V1, which we'll talk about it more in depth in a little bit. But I want to show off this horse, this gorgeous horse, and you guys might notice something about this horse that is, besides the fact that they're missing a mane and tail, we're aware of that part. That is due, like I said, to file path things that we can't change without breaking V1. So we're waiting to do that until closer to the launch of V2. But yeah, this horse is Brindle. I was gonna see if anybody would pop it up in chat, but yeah, we've got a lovely Brindle Palomino. This is genetic Brindle, which I believe revealed in a blog post recently in the last couple months. So if you guys don't follow our blog, it's just blog.legacyhorsegame.com. I usually post in the Discord when we have a blog post, and I always post it on the Facebook page as well. So if you want to keep up with that, I would recommend either being in the Discord and keeping track of the announcements channel, or following us on Facebook and also watching there, or just, check into the blog. We usually post every Wednesday or so. We try to post every Wednesday on the blog. We're not perfect on it because we both have full-time jobs and obviously want to focus on getting the game across the finish line more than advertising it right now. But we are wanting to reveal as much about V2 through the blog, because we can't do a live stream every week or every month because of real life obligations. And every time we live stream, it takes away from both, our family time and time that we would otherwise be spend working on the game. So we love doing the live streams. I love doing the live streams. I love interacting with you guys. It's just difficult to fit them in because they're usually a couple hours long. So plus, if we did one every week, we wouldn't have enough to share every week. We would share everything too quickly. But yeah, genetic Brindle, which will, if we go to the ranch page, be importable. So right now it only is on the light. In V1 we only have, or V2 we only have the artwork for the light body type done. So we're just gonna import another Akeltec. It has to be a mare to be shown because of how Brindle works in real life. Let's make sure it's something it'll be visible on. We're not going to do any dilutions, but yeah, we can select Brindle right here, and we're not going to do a pattern. Let's go ahead and import this horse and see if it shows. Hopefully it does. There was a bug with this that I think I fixed, but I had to manually fix that other horse. So fingers crossed. It does. Yay, it's working. We love when it's working. So yeah, there's a chestnut Brindle. And is Brindle testable, or was that the other thing that we added?
Brindle's testable.
Okay. I haven't added the test in the game yet. We have a couple new things that we need to add in the genetic testing, right? Or is it just Brindle?
I think Brindle and one other.
Yeah, okay.
That we haven't mentioned yet.
We're going to reveal the other thing later. Because it's still a little bit of a work in progress, but more exciting things to come, guys. Stay tuned. But yeah, so this will be a testable gene. It will be importable in a custom import. Hopefully the game does not become overwhelmed by Brindles, but Lydia can explain this better than I can probably, but Brindle is connected to the sex chromosome in horses, which means males cannot express it, kind of like calicos and cats, right? Am I right in that comparison?
Yeah, exactly.
So males cannot express it, although they can carry it. Only females, mares or fillies, I guess you could say, will express it. So, and we can actually show that off right now and make sure it's actually working the way I'm intending it. So let's go ahead and import another tech We'll make it a stallion. We'll make it another chestnut. No dilutions. We'll add brindle. And we'll do no pattern. They're not working right now anyway. And we'll give it a little second. We have a lot of little quality of life changes like those spinning wheels, guys, coming to V2. As many as I can think of. And if you guys have any quality of life changes that you would like to see in V2, hit us up in Discord. Post it in the forums in V1, although Discord is probably a better place for us to be the most likely to see it the most quickly. But yeah, we have a stallion. I can't test him, but I know that he carries brindle, but he can express it. So really cool. Great feature that we added. And it goes back to part of the way that we were able to add this is because we're doing the chromosomal inheritance now, and it's tied to the sex chromosome. It's a little tricky. I'm not going to get into the code of it for multiple reasons, but it would probably bore and confuse you all anyway. The other thing we want to show off, there's 2 new sections or updated sections on the horses page here. And you might see here the feed page, this feed didn't exist. It was a part of a different section, but feed has its own section now. And you'll see it's a little bit different. So how feed is going to work in V2 is going to be a little bit more granular. You could have a little bit more granular control over your horse's feed than you could in V1. We still have the presets, the basic, conditioning, concentrated, or balancer. But you could do it yourself if you want to. So what that means is a horse can have up to 35 pounds of feed per day rollover. It's per day, but obviously our days are also rollover months. There's a little crossover there with how our time system works. So bear with me. We're just going to say per day. And you can adjust these sliders. And if you see down here, you're going to see this condition impact. It's going to tell you what the condition change. And this is only the feed impact, not the overall change. But the impact the feed will have on the horse's condition. So this does not take into account if they have a job. It doesn't take into account if they're showing or in training. It just tells you what the feed will do. This also means that the condition has changed a little bit. So horses will naturally lose 0.5. Will you double check me on that? I think it's 0.5. It might be 0.25. But they will naturally lose, if you didn't give them any feed, which isn't even possible, but if you didn't give them any feed, they would lose 0.5 condition every rollover. However, you can offset that by just giving them 10 pounds of grass hay. So 10 pounds of grass hay is the equivalent of the basic setting. So that's 0.75. Oh, that's because this horse is in the pasture, probably. No, it's in a barn. I'll have to, that might be a bug. This probably should say 0.2 or 0.5, not 0.75. So I think it's 20 pounds. I think the number down here might be wrong. But anyways, it'll work for explanation purposes. So you want to offset that. The minimum amount of feed. So if I try to set this to 0 and change it, it says, please provide a feed amount greater than 0. So you have to feed your horse something. But I could choose, so hay gives I believe it should be 0.25 per 10 pounds. Alfalfa gives 0.5 per 10 pounds, and grain gives 0.2 per 1 pound. So grass and hay you can give up to 30 pounds in 10-pound increments, or grass hay and alfalfa hay. Grain is in up to 5 pounds in 1 pound increments. So you can really tweak it to be exactly what you want it to be. And then there's also the slow feeder. So we got rid of the concentrated or the conditioning feed because it doesn't really exist in real life. Instead, we have the slow feeder option. If you're not aware of a slow feeder, it's a mask that you put on a horse so they can't graze as quickly. I know a horse that was pastured with my horse back when I had a horse, would colic really easily and on the grass. They lived right off all along a river, so the grass was really rich and sugary. Had a lot of sugar content, so they had to put a grazing mask, slow feeder mask. It could also be like a hay net. There's hay nets that are considered slow feeders too. It's just anything that slows down the horse's access to the feed so they can't eat as quickly. It's going to have a negative 0.25, which it's going to say 0 right now because I believe it is taking into account. Yeah, this condition impact is broken. It will be fixed. But if you don't want to get that granular, you don't want to manage your feed that granularly, you could just go to the old system and choose each of these. You can see it sets the preset to what it should be. Yeah, this is definitely wrong because this should be losing 0.5 condition. This should be at 0. So yeah, I'll set it to concentrated, hit change. We'll get a little notification that says I successfully changed their feed, and set it, leave it. Same with the range manager. For those of you who are using the range manager, he'll manage this based off presets too. Like I said, this was just to give you guys a little bit more control over your horse's feed, a little bit more realism, if you want. Okay. Brings us to the next new feature, which is hygiene care. Both of these features were things that we wanted to add more realism to the game and add more ways for you to engage with your horse without keeping it optional. So that's why we still have the presets for the feed. And then for the hygiene care, there is an option, or there will be. I haven't implemented the toggle to turn a groom on or off, but there will be an option to hire a groom so that it's completely automated, just like auto trainers. The groom will be accessible to anyone, whether you have a subscription or not. It's just like auto trainers. But you can manually do this if you want. So let me what horse is this? 17. I'm going to just tweak some stuff on the back end really fast on this horse. If I can find the right table. Okay, this will take just a second, guys, because it's not fully functional yet. Rollover doesn't work yet. I just need to tweak 2 quick values, and then I'll refresh the page. And you'll see what it would look like if it was in the worst possible condition. I should have done this before the stream, but we didn't actually know we were going to go over this until I have 2 fields I gotta fix that. Okay, so if I refresh this page, you can now see co-condition is at 0, stall dirtiness is at 100. Gomi, we will get to that. That is something we're going to discuss at the end of the stream. So hold on to that question for just a little bit. So stall dirtiness and hoof dirtiness, these are all the worst possible. Oh, they're not all the worst possible. I have to tweak one more value. Sorry. It'll be super quick. I want them all to be the worst possible value. Okay. now they're all the worst possible value. So hoof is really long, hoof is really dirty, stall is really dirty, coat condition is 0. The bars show you which side you want it to be at. So the pink is bad, the green is good. But you can come in and you can click this brush and brush your horse and the condition goes up, and pick their hooves and the hoof dirtiness goes down, and clean their stall and stall dirtiness goes down. And then you can choose to shoe them or have them trimmed. There's a couple things to consider when considering whether or not you're going to shoe a horse. Let me pull up the documentation on that. The horses now have a hoof condition value based on some genetics, and that hoof condition is impacted by the hoof care. So the dirtier the hoof is, I'm just reading to me. Or sorry, I said that wrong. On the nutrition that the horse receives, which we translated into the condition of the horse. We don't really do weight. We do this condition as a parallel to weight in our horses. And so that kind of equivalent is the equivalent of how good nutrition the horse is getting. If the horse is getting the right nutrition, they're going to be between moderately thin and moderately fat. If they're getting too little nutrition or too little nutrition, too few calories, or I guess too little nutrition, they're going to be between emaciated and moderately thin. Obviously, you want them to be no thinner than moderately thin. And if they're getting too much, they're going to be between fleshy and extremely fat, which is also not good. So the condition and the base hoof, we call it hoof softness, the genetic potential of the hoof, will impact whether or not the horse needs to be shod. And you also need to take into account what your horse is doing. So a horse that's just out in pasture, living its best life, not performing in a discipline, not doing any hard work. I don't think we had jobs impacting this, but maybe we should consider that. Right now, the only thing that's really impacting it is what discipline they're training or showing in. There's some calculations that go on the back end, but essentially, you'll be able to see we'll probably add it to the confirmation tab or here. Might just add it here, actually. I think here would be a better place. This value, so you can see what the horse's current hoof condition is. And depending on the condition and what they're doing, what show they're performing in or training in, will tell you whether or not they need shoes. So a really low impact show like in hand, or just horses living their best life out in pasture, the minimum hoof condition that would require them to be shod would be around like 20. Whereas something like saddle jumping, you would want to shoe them if their condition is less than 50. And then reining is where it gets a little bit tricky. And guys, we're going to put out a blog post on this that'll go into it in a much clearer, more in-depth way. So bear with us on that. And there will be wiki. Yeah, we will be updating the wiki for V2 as well. But before we get it into the wiki, there will be a blog post going over this. So reining is tricky because reining, you could either have just the front, you could have all shoes. Reining, they do sliding, and they usually need special shoes for that. So what we figured was so reining horses always need shoes. But if you choose to only shoe the back feet, which is usually what they do if their hooves are in good condition, but they do need the sliders on the back feet. Then if the horse's hoof is better than 50 condition, at like the 50% mark on condition, you'll get charged half the cost of shoeing them. So it gets a little tricky, but I'm just going to trim the horse's feet right now. So you can, which is just calling the farrier. These buttons are really just calling the farrier. So the farrier successfully removes Stallion's shoes. So this removes the shoes and trims it. This puts the shoes on. So I can click this right away and it'll call the farrier again and they shod the horse. There will be an indicator on here. This isn't quite fully worked out. That tells you if your horse is wearing shoes or not. I haven't quite worked out how I want to display that. And then obviously we need to add the hoof condition bar so you know where you're, or some visual representation of the hoof condition. We're still kind of working it out, but okay.
And it'll have an automated option too, so if you don't want to deal with it, like we said. So
yeah, if you have a groomer assigned to the horse, they will take care of calling the farrier for you. So all you have to do, if you don't want to deal with any of this, is hire a groomer. If you hire a groomer and you decide to brush them every other day, the groomer won't charge you for brushing them on the days that you do it yourself. So you could do it how I do auto trainers right now. I have auto trainers turned on all the time, but usually in the mornings I manually train my horses. So I don't get charged for the morning, but they still get trained in the afternoon. Same thing will be doable with this. The groomer will check and say if the condition or whatever, the dirtiness is okay, I'm not going to touch them. Which made me just realize I have the code backwards, so I need to go flip that when I think of it. Can you make a note of that, Lydia? Just write down something like flip groomer code and rollover. I don't know what it means. Okay. That is all of the new features that we're going to reveal today because I feel like those two are overwhelming enough as is. Plus all the little tidbits and quality of life changes that we revealed. What I am going to do now, or what we are going to do now, is talk about the timeline for V2 and the progress. So let's talk about 2025, which, holy moly, guys, when did it become almost 2025? It's crazy. We have days left. Like three days left. I can't believe it. Anyways, so for January, I just bit my tongue. Ow. Give me a second. Okay, sorry, had to get Frank. For January, we will just continue to develop progress on V2's MVP, which stands for minimal viable products. So the minimum that we have to complete in order to get V2 live and in your hands, we'll continue to work on that in January. Bringing us to February when we will do another live stream. So we're trying to stream every other month. That gives us enough time to make a good chunk of progress and reveal new features via the blog and Facebook, and give you guys time to, come up with new questions. Then that brings us into March, where things get a little interesting. So March is when we are going to be shutting down V1. It doesn't really matter where we are on progress on V2 sometime, and we'll have a firm date closer to March, probably sometime in early February, late January, early February at the latest. But V1 will be shutting down before V2 is launched. Sometime between March 1st and April 1st is when we'll be doing it. And the reason we're doing that is there's a myriad of reasons. I have to be able to migrate the data from V1 to V2, and there needs to be no change to the data between the time I start and finish that process. So if I were to try to start migrating the data, and somebody were to buy a credit from the store, or change the ranch name, or any change to any of the information that's going to persist between V1 and V2, such as any account information, any credit purchases or store purchases, or any ranch information or changes, it will completely derail my migration process. So I need to be able to work with static data. The other reason is we're making fundamental changes to how the game works. We have completely rewritten the game from the ground up. The code is nothing like, there's some of it that parallels each other, but it is all from scratch. I intended to reuse a lot of the code, but I ended up finding that it was better just to write it from scratch with the amount of knowledge that I've gained over the last, 5 years that I've been working on the game. At the point of starting V2, it was about 4 years of working on the game and being in my career as a developer. Professionally, I've just learned so much that I realized that V1's code was functional, but not well done. Willing to admit that. But I think that V1 needed to happen the way that it did, including having live access, you guys having access, in order for me to learn some of the stuff, the valuable things that I've learned that I could pull into V2. We also needed the time to play V1 to know some of the changes that we need to make to V2. So no regrets on V1 going live, no regrets on having to redo it. But it is just the reality of the situation. Because of the fundamental ways that we've changed the code and database changes on how the horses are set up, as well as how the artwork's going to be pulled in, stuff like that. If I start making those changes while V1 is live, V1 is just going to break. So it's just not possible to do a overnight swap. It's going to take time to manipulate what needs to change from V1 to V2 so they work. So yes, V1 will be shutting down between March 1st and April 1st. We'll have a firm date by early February to you guys. That brings us into April, and April is when we're going to go ahead and start the data migration process. Now, this is all going to be on the back end. It's all going to be on our side. It isn't something that you guys have to opt in or opt out of. If you had an account on V1, it's going to get migrated to V2. Your ranches will all get migrated. Certain things will be reset. The amount of money that your ranch has will be reset to the starting value. Really important to note, anything that you have purchased in the store during V1 will be, that hasn't been utilized. So any credits that are unused will be migrated. And subscriptions, what we're going to do is, it's going to be a little bit trickier, but we'll notate the date that we take down V1. And any time between that date and the expiration date of your subscription will be added to your subscription at the start date of V2. So as soon as you get access to V2, if you had 3 months remaining in your subscription and it takes, I don't think it's going to take 3 months to migrate it, but if it does take 3 months to migrate it, that 3 months will start at the date that you get access to V2. So you won't lose any time on your subscription. Something to note, subscription credits are going away. We're not going to do gifting subscriptions the same way because of the change in how subscriptions are going to work that I mentioned earlier, where it's going to be managed by a third party. We can't do subscription credits. It just won't work the same way. Only one person has one subscription credit currently. So what we're going to do is we're just going to manually add that time to that person's subscription. When it comes time to do that, we'll interact with them and figure that out. So it's not going to have a huge impact on 99% of the player base. But that is something to be aware of. Subscription credits will be going away in V2. Any existing subscription credits will be usable. It'll just be a manual process on our end, and the player in question will work out with them how that's going to happen. Before I move on to May, do you guys have any questions about the shutdown or data migration process? I'm going to give it just a second, see if anybody has any other questions. Gives me a chance to. Okay. If you do end up having a question and you didn't have a chance to get it in during that pause, just throw it out there and we'll pause and answer it. So that brings us to May. And May is when we are targeting. I want to pause and just preface this, and I should have said this at the beginning. Besides the V1 takedown, that's happening sometime between March 1st and April 1st, no matter what. Everything past March or past April 1st is a best case scenario. It's our target dates, but stuff could happen. So just be aware that this is not set in stone. We're going to do our best to hit all of these milestones at these points in 2025, but real life happens. We both work full-time jobs. I just moved and I'm in the process of potentially changing jobs. So there's a lot that could derail this timeline. So just something to be aware of. But the goal is for active Patreon members. So people that are active Patreon members at the time that Patreon access is granted, will be given access sometime between May 1st and June 31st. I know that that's like a 2-month gap and that's really wide, but we again, I'm just going to reiterate, we both work full-time jobs. This is a part-time gig for us, although we probably put full-time hours in. Definitely full-time between the two of us, but I wouldn't be surprised if we both put in almost full-time hours individually. So we're going to do our best to hit sometime between May 1st and June 31st, which is still a month earlier than we originally publicized that we were going to try to hit. So even if we hit the end of that target date range, we'll still be a month ahead of where we had anticipated being the last time we streamed, so only 2 months ago. One thing to note for Patreon members, and we'll also be posting this in the Patreon, on the Patreon and in the Patreon Discord channel, you will still get your credits during the shutdown. You will still get subscription time added during the shutdown. That time will then be migrated to whatever start date. So let's say we start giving Patreon members access on May 1st. Actually, Patreon members will get free access to the subscription during the Patreon trial period, testing period. The subscription will be added at the start point of public access. So when when V2 goes live for the entirety of the public, not just Patreon members, we'll take however many months of subscription that the Patreon members have accumulated between the time of V1 shutdown and the time of V2 public access, and we will credit their subscriptions by that amount. Any additional months after that will be then added on. So if a Patreon member, let's say it takes 3 months to migrate and to give everyone public access, so Patreon members will then have a 3-month subscription. If a Patreon member cancels a month in, they will still get those 3 months. I hope I explained that well enough. I don't feel like I did, but it's kind of convoluted thing to explain. But don't worry. The point is we'll make sure that everybody gets fair access to what they've paid for. Okay, let's go into the end of quarter 2 and into June. So June, we're just going to be testing V2. It'll be going through thorough testing during the Patreon only access phase. So we're going to do preliminary testing for at least a month-ish, a few weeks to a month, probably a month, before we even give Patreon members access. But we're not going to do the as thorough or in-depth testing. Well, we will, but we'll continue to do the very thorough testing while Patreon members are playing. The reason that we are giving Patreon members earlier access, one, it's just a perk for being a Patreon member. We appreciate the fact that Patreon members are able to financially or help financially support the game. And we want to give them credit for that. And also, it gives us a smaller player base to start testing in a broader environment. We're going to do our best to test it as much as possible between the two of us, but more people are going to find more bugs. It's just law of averages. And so that gives us a chance to have a smaller subset of players start, finding bugs. Hopefully not very many. Hopefully we've got most of them worked out, but before we launch it to everyone, and that'll hopefully also slow down the rate the bugs are coming in and give me time to fix them before we launch to hundreds of people. I think we have 20 Patreon members, 20 to 30. It might be less than that, actually. I know we lost a few recently. But yeah, it allows us to have a smaller testing pool to start. In fact, I feel like the Patreon members are doing us a favor by by playing early. But it is obviously a perk for them financially supporting the game. So, okay, that brings us into July. July is our target date for public access. July 1st to August 15th range is sometime in that 6-week range. We're hoping to... Again, this is dependent on when we give Patreon members access. If Patreon members don't get access until June 31st, we need at least a month of them playing before we can give public access. That's why there's such a range there. It also is dependent on how many bugs the Patreon members find. If they're finding like 10 bugs a day, we're not going to give public access until that number slows down to like a bug or two a week or a bug or two a day, depending on, where we're at. So the Patreon access range will be sometime between a month to 2 months. Once we hit 2 months, we're going to just go to public access. We're not going to stretch it out any further than that. But it will be partially dependent on how many bugs we find. So a minimum of a month, maximum of 2 months will be the Patreon phase. Going into public access, hopefully between July 1st and August 15th. That brings us into August. So going into August, and once the public has full access to the game, bug fixing will become the main priority. Missing features or new features that haven't been implemented yet will go to the back burner, and we'll primarily focus on fixing any bugs that the existing game has. And yeah, that's it for hopefully what August will be focused on. Obviously, if the bugs aren't coming in that fast, then we'll continue to work on the new and additional features. But I anticipate there to be bugs because it's a big application. I'm a solo dev in terms of coding. It's easy to miss stuff. And while we will do as much testing as we can, it's inevitable. It's a part of software development. It's something I've had to learn as a developer, as a perfectionist, to come to terms with the fact that bugs are a way of life for us. Anyways, let's go into September. So September, we will focus on any incomplete V2 features, such as the forum, the in-game messaging system, the instant messaging system, and a couple unannounced features. that will be coming. So that will be in September as well as October. And of course, we'll continue bug fixing as we add features and as bugs come up. Bringing us into November with, again, continued development. So any incomplete features, we don't have them all listed here because some of them are still a surprise, stuff that we want to reveal over time. And then that moves us into December of 2025. And our goal, my goal as the coder, is to have the game version 2 feature complete by the end of 2025. So by the end of December of next year, 2025, I hope that we'll have all of the major features in the game. There might be some minor features that will, or, little tweaks that we might still do, but the foundation of all the major features will be hopefully complete by the end of December of 2025. That would bring us into going public, post alpha, full launch, sometime in the Q1 of 2026. That will really depend. We don't really want to give a date for that because it really depends on how the next 3 to 6 months go. But yeah, that is it. I will publish this along with the video when we publish the video this week, the recording. But yeah, that's all I have for everyone. I think we've gone over all of the important information. One key thing, when we give you, white V1, when we migrate the data from V1 to V2, everyone will be given, ranches will be reset like as if they were reset in game, which means they'll go back to 250K cash. They'll go back to 1 barn and 1 pasture. And we will add 5 credits to every account. So that it's not resetting it to 5 credits, it's adding 5 credits. So if you already had 3 credits, you'll end up with 8. If you had 0 credits, you'll end up with 5, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an important thing to note. But Lydia, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. It was very thorough.
Okay. I know I just threw a ton at you guys. We went over a lot of stuff. We're getting into the nitty gritty part where a lot of small things are happening. So there's a lot of little things to go over. We do have some really big, cool features that we're going to be announcing in the next 3 months. We'll say 3 months. I think we'll get through most of the major features by the time we shut down. 3 months that's 2 months. So yeah, by the time Patreons get access to the game, we'll have pretty much everything revealed to everyone. Patreon members obviously know about most of these features already because they get early insight into things. Small plug, if you are able to financially support the game and you want to be a Patreon member, if you want to get early access to V2, we will post a link to our Patreon in the description of this video when the VOD goes live, as well as on the Discord. It is not necessary. It's just if you want to have that early access and you want the behind the scenes information on features before, and they're quite early. Like we have things that we've told them over a year ago that we still haven't told the public side of things. So, and we also, when we feel it's necessary, we get opinions of the entirety of the player base. But there's a lot of little things that we'll ask Patreons, like if we're wishy-washy about a decision or design decision for the game, we do take input from the Patreon members. And Patreon member feedback has and will continue to make an impact on the development of the game. Not always. Sometimes we've decided to do a feature a specific way for a specific reason. But say there's been over half a dozen situations where their feedback has impacted the direction of a feature. So, yeah, I'm going to just open it up for any questions that you guys have. We'll give it a couple minutes. This went actually quite a bit quicker than I thought it was going to. And like I said, we'll have the VOD live by the end of the week, end of next week. With the holiday and everything, it might get a little tricky, but we'll also have this timeline posted once the VOD is posted, and we will likely only in the Discord. I'm probably not going to post this on Facebook because without context, it could be confusing. And yeah, I think that's all I have. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. We'll give it a couple minutes. And if nobody asks anything, I think we'll wrap up. All right. I'm not seeing anybody having any questions. We'll give it another minute. No. I know we only have 6 viewers, and I think one of those is Lydia, so we have a lot of people. For those of you watching the VOD, if you have any questions regarding anything, feel free to hit us up in the Discord. If you're not a member of the Discord, you can always email us at info@legacyhorsegame.com, or message us on our Facebook page if you're more comfortable doing that. We try to be as responsive to Facebook as we can be. Occasionally miss messages there, though. Discord is definitely the fastest and most direct way to get into contact with us, though. So if you have anything pressing that you want to ask us, I highly recommend joining the Discord. Also, it's just a great community. We have an awesome community there. Everyone they're just great. Everyone's so great and supportive of each other. And I love particularly the hobbies channel and the pets channel. Those are my favorite. I love seeing everybody's pets. I should post pictures of my pets more frequently because they're pretty cute too when they're not being naughty. All right. I don't see any questions. I think we've given it enough time. So guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the stream. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate all of your support, whether you're a Patreon member and are able to support the game financially, or if you're just an active member of the community. It really does make a difference. It really does help keep us motivated. Although I will say we are very motivated to get V2 live. We both are dying to play it, and I'm dying for the annoying bugs in V1 and the annoying lack of quality of life changes that I know are coming to V2. It's making them even more annoying to me. Like, oh, I can't wait until I can do. I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but like the toasts and stuff like that. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you next time.